Alright, hello everybody, we are back with Nintendo Week. I'm your host, Colin McIsaac, and I'm joined by Alex Plant.
Hey.
And Bentley Moreau.
What's going on?
And we are here to discuss all of the news Nintendo revealed today about smartphones, about their next generation of console hardware. Wow, there's so much here. So, I mean,
all the things.
I mean, let's start off with their smartphone plans. So they announced their plans for smartphones. Essentially, they are going to be releasing games. For a long time, they were saying they would not release games. They would just release apps that would bring consumers on smartphones back to Nintendo consoles. A couple of weeks ago, though, here on this podcast, we sort of said, no matter what you do with these companion apps, they're not going to convince people to buy Nintendo hardware, to buy Nintendo games. Companion apps are really built for people who already have that stuff. And we said, the best thing for them to do would be to release games on smartphones that give people a taste of what Nintendo's all about, and then say, hey, look, you can buy a Wii U, you can buy a 3DS, you can get all these games, way better games, and, get a lot more out of them if you buy our hardware instead. And it looks like that's exactly what they're going to do. They have announced a new partnership with a company called DNA. It's called DNA, not Dina. Got a little bit of a confusing way of spelling their name there. But it's a mobile gaming conglomerate? They're a conglomerate, right? Or do they just have, some services?
I don't know how you define conglomerate in this context, so...
I don't know. Okay, well, anyway, they're...
Do they conglomerate?
Well, they're a big company in the mobile game space. They've been pushing Nintendo since 2010, so that's for 5 years to be able to use Nintendo's IP in their smartphone games. And they're very, very familiar with using microtransactions and using the free-to-play model for their games. So that is a point of a little bit of caution, because I think we can all agree that Nintendo is best when their gameplay experiences are pay once and play. And it's all right there.
Although that is something they've talked about experimenting with more in the future. I mean, we've seen with Steel Diver and Pokemon Shuffle.
Rusty's Real Deal Baseball, too, which people say is a really, really good way to do free-to-play.
And I know one franchise they've talked about going free-to-play with, they're just making a free-to-play iteration, is Animal Crossing. So that's something where, it's possible they could pull it off pretty well with, just optional things that you could purchase with microtransactions.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think if there's any company I trust to do microtransactions the right way, it's Nintendo.
I was going to say EA.
Clearly.
Well, but so the point is, I guess it's sort of a balancing act. How far will Nintendo dip their toes into what DNA is familiar with, and how far will DNA be willing to dip their toes into what Nintendo's familiar with? How much is it DNA just sort of mooching off of Nintendo IP to make their games and market them, and how much of it is Nintendo using DNA's resources and familiarity with the model to benefit them? That's a big question, I think, for everyone, and I don't think we really have an answer yet. Although I think,
we can raise some questions about some things. Like, for example, one thing that DNA said in the announcement was they've only recently started to shift from feature phones to smartphones, which sounds more significant than it actually is, because
feature phones,
those would be like your old like flip phone type phones. And that's less significant than it sounds, because in Japan, the transition from feature phones has been a lot slower than in the US. But at the same time, since this partnership probably aims to be super global and not just focused on Japan, it's a little disheartening to see a company that really doesn't have much experience with smartphones as Nintendo's partner.
They let's see, where is this? They've made tons and tons of smartphone games in the past. They have a million things on the App Store.
Well, they've said that they've only started transitioning to native apps recently. So, I mean, that's not to say they have no experience, but they're really a company that's more experienced in Japan trends, not in global trends.
They have at least, 50 apps already. Which is, I mean, that's a big number.
Yeah, I guess
especially if they're only saying recently.
I think it kind of makes sense that they would choose a company that has a little more Japan expertise, not just because Nintendo is based in Japan, but also because the mobile gaming boom has just really struck Japan. It's to the point now where mobile games already in 2013 generated more money than all handhelds and consoles combined in Japan. the mobile gaming market was worth over $5 billion in Japan in 2013, and it's presumably even higher in 2014. I don't think we've gotten the full numbers for last year yet. So maybe this is something where Nintendo starts with Japan and, seeing how they can take advantage of that because, obviously Wii U's not selling particularly well there, so that's an area where they're not bringing in as much money from that region as they used to. And then as they get a little more familiar with, their partnership with DNA and with making mobile games, then they can maybe stretch it out into more of a global effort. Because they definitely do want to go global, but Japan is just a huge mobile market right now, and more so than either the handheld or console market.
Yeah, that's true. And I will say it's encouraging.
That's a really good point.
It is encouraging that they're going after a partner for this, and they're not trying to kind of take on everything themselves. Because this really is a brand new area for Nintendo. Whereas, even though I have some reservations about DNA and smartphones, they do have much more mobile experience, especially when it comes to mobile business models.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and with Nintendo already sometimes struggling to keep up with game releases, and then, they're trying to launch this quality of life platform. Now, if they go smartphones, too, that's just a lot of different ventures to be working on all at once. So it's good to see that they brought a port.
Let's do everything!
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and mobile is such this fast-moving space, too, that they really do need to expand their workforce, and this is one way that they can do that without having to hire on a bunch of talent themselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, so their first game launches this year, so we can tell they're already at least making some sort of progress. If anything else, their DNA is making some sort of progress.
Yes.
And analysts are super happy with this decision. They all say neither DNA nor Nintendo are market leaders in their fields. They can both help each other become the market leaders, which that's totally valid. I think there are really good opportunities here. I hope that I hope that they don't fall into some of the pitfalls that mobile gaming makes really enticing.
You know who else is really happy right now? Nintendo's investors.
Yes, their stock is skyrocketing. It's like 30%
There was like a 25%.
higher.
I think it was 25% last
25%?
time I checked. Is it 50 now?
It went up and down throughout the day. The highest I saw it hit was 30, and it closed the day at 27.45%.
Okay.
And that's still like higher than it's been since early 2014, I want to say. So
yeah,
and that's
it's a big number.
That's a turnaround in one day. That's phenomenal.
Here's how quick Nintendo stock was jumping this afternoon or this late morning. I wrote the article and I posted it, and then before I shared it to our Facebook page, I wanted to go back and proofread it, make sure everything was all good. And in the time it took me to edit the article, I went to go share it, and I just on a whim kind of double checked the stock price, and it had gone up from 23% to 29% in like 5 minutes that it took me to edit the article.
Wow.
So I actually had to change the title and the URL before I shared it to Facebook.
Wow. So, I mean, the question is, first we want to put out there that this is the second half of the news, is that they are not abandoning the home console market. They're still a dedicated gaming company. They talked about a new console for the next generation of gaming platforms, which is currently codenamed NX, and they didn't give us any information about it. They're going to give us information about it next year. I'm assuming that probably means they'll talk about it at E3 2016. That is.
Yeah, the only news we got really is that they teased that it's a brand new concept, is the phrase they use.
So we really don't know anything about that. Speculation is going to be a lot harder than it is for mobile games. You can already pre-order it though. GameStop, or what is it, EB Games Australia, is already offering pre-orders for NX already.
It's a little ambitious given that it probably won't even launch till like 2016, 2017.
Well, those $5 will be a $5 well deposited, Alex. So don't worry, the smartphone endeavor doesn't mean that, they're still going to be doing everything that we love them doing. They're just also going to be putting their IP onto mobile devices. And I have a feeling they'll probably make a couple new IP for smartphones as well. But, let's talk briefly about what kinds of games we think might be coming to smartphones. We already talked in the last podcast, like WarioWare, Rhythm Heaven, that kind of stuff, like Elite Beat Agents, just begs to be on smartphones. I kind of get the feeling that if they make games in any of those franchises in the future, it will be on smartphones, designed specifically for smartphones, because I feel like there's just no market for like WarioWare especially anymore on their dedicated platforms.
So something one of our one of our readers commented on one of the articles, I actually thought was a pretty good idea, is an auto runner Mario game.
Like a side scroller?
Yeah, just a classic side scroll Mario game where you're automatically running and you just time.
That's interesting because I was asked to review a mobile game yesterday. It was an auto running side scroller, and in reviewing it, in playing it for potentially reviewing it, I realized auto-running side-scrollers are just a fundamentally bad idea on mobile because your fingers are getting in the way of the action, and when there's no margin of error for players, it's really, really hard to to play. It's a very frustrating experience. So I don't think that an auto-running side-scroller is a good idea at all.
Well, I think it depends on the UI, because if it's all left to right, you could just have someone tap on the left side of the screen, then they're not going to be missing anything, because the left side of the screen is stuff that's behind them anyway.
But that's what this game was, and I thought
really?
I thought that wouldn't be a problem, but it turned out to be a problem. Now, granted, this game was a hard game by nature already, so it dumped you into like a level that was hard to play, so you had to not only figure out the mechanics while navigating a really frantically changing platformer, but even with the buttons in the corners, it was just by nature of mobile and having your thumbs on the screen blocking a part of the action, it was very hard to get used to that. And I think with Mario it's a little easier because Mario is just by nature a pretty easy side scroller, but I still don't think that's the best idea.
Well, something I had also mentioned earlier was an Animal Crossing mobile game, because there's just so much collectible content and things like that, and user-generated content too, when you design your own patterns and everything. So I think that's something that could be ripe for a format where you can unlock everything just by playing, but maybe you can get some rare items as microtransactions and things like that. And that would be really good at bringing in a younger audience.
Yeah, and it would also be really good at bringing in people who want a much better Animal Crossing experience to other systems from Nintendo. Because, getting like a small taste of Animal Crossing, I think iPhone is a really good method of delivery for that. And it's also such a leisurely game that the touch controls, we all know touch controls are not as responsive as traditional buttons. It's kind of frustrating. That's a major reason why Nintendo has been avoiding mobile platforms in the past. But something like Animal Crossing, you really don't need terribly responsive controls. You don't like take damage. You don't die in Animal Crossing, so it's not a problem.
Yeah,
unless you piss off Tom Nook.
And I mean, the most action you'll get out of it anyway is a mini game, which they can easily tweak for touch controls anyway.
Right.
Now, a cool thing I would think about, and I mentioned this when we previously talked about smartphones, is a cool thing about an Animal Crossing smartphone game was that if you're collecting items, if that's the main thing that's happening, Nintendo could always link that back up to the console games where you can send your items back over to your console game. So that'd be a good way for players to kind of get playtime even when they're away from their system. Yeah,
I completely agree there. And beyond Animal Crossing, I also think they could do something cool with The Legend of Zelda and do like a dungeon game, like an app where it like tests your reflexes to get to the dungeon the end of the dungeon as quickly as possible. They could do something like that. They could do something like the Cuckoo mini game from Link Between Worlds. Just put that on iPhone and call it a day. I think that would work really well. Stuff like a shooting gallery that you control with gyro, kind of like in Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time 3D. Could be a lot of fun. So I think there's some really cool opportunities to put Zelda mini games on smartphones and have the main Zelda experiences on home consoles. And that's not to say get rid of mini games in the home console games, but to give someone, like, say you're going on a train and you still have a hankering to play Zelda, you can then go on your iPhone and play the mini game, and you still get your fix of Zelda even if you're not at home on the couch on the Wii U. I think that's a really good idea. And like you said, Alex, you can also you could then like put that back into the game. Say you have the shooting gallery game and you win, you get a heart piece. You could then sync that up to the game and get the heart piece as a reward for the shooting gallery minigame in the game. And that way you'd save yourself the trouble of having to sit down on the couch in order to do something like that and reap the rewards of playing the game from home. That was a terribly inarticulate way of putting it, but
yeah, whatever.
You know what I mean, I think.
So I don't I don't have a single game on my smartphone. I just don't really do smartphone gaming. But I guarantee that I would buy in a second if Nintendo released a Pokemon Battle Simulator, like similar to what like Smogon has going on, but with official Nintendo rules.
I never
and stuff.
thought of that, but Ben, you're a genius.
And link it to your
fast.
Pokemon bank account. Because
Honestly,
that should be a thing.
That is a really good idea.
That's what I thought they should do immediately when they first announced Pokemon Bank, is this is an opportunity to bring Pokemon off of your Nintendo platforms and do something with them. They're on the internet now.
I'm not sure they would do that. I feel like they fear that if they put a battle simulator on the iPhone, that'll eliminate the desire for the Pokemon fans to play the metagame on the consoles.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an area where they wouldn't do it because they feel it could hurt sales. But that was more of a my dream game.
Right,
that,
I see.
This is probably going to happen game.
And finally, I know we talked about this before, finally on my part anyway. I know we talked about this before in the other one, but I think they could do a really good job with a mobile Mario Kart game that's just controlled by the gyro controls. You know, just press the bottom right corner to accelerate and press the bottom left corner to use your item. But do a really great Mario Kart game that's just one cup, has like just Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Bowser to choose from, that has entirely new courses, but it's on smartphones, and that way you can play it a lot more. I know I would play that a lot more than Mario Kart 8 because it's just so convenient to pull a phone out of your pocket and start playing a game than it is to really sit down and decide I'm going to play Wii U right now. Especially if you're not at home, because then you don't have your Wii U.
Wait, you don't carry your Wii U with you?
Yeah, you just put it in my pocket.
Isn't
just
that
like
the new
Villager.
Nintendo Portable? Another similar idea they could do is Star Fox. It could use a very similar control scheme. It's on rails, so it's not too demanding to necessarily have to turn your smartphone a certain way to get your ship to move a certain way. Plus, we all want more Star Fox. And what better way than on a platform where they don't have to worry too much about sales?
Right. And of course, there's always, Super Mario Pinball Land and Metroid Prime Pinball and Pokemon Pinball X and Y, which I just thought of that on the spot, but they should do that as a sequel to the past two Pokemon Pinball games. Mobile devices would be a really great platform for those kinds of games, and again, you could use them to unlock optional, of course, rewards in your main games. Like, so if they did a Pokemon Pinball, you could unlock, like extra like Master Balls and stuff, and extra Max Revives.
I personally would love an easy path to the EV grinding items, because those are always a pain to get.
Oh my god, yes.
That would be one thing that I wouldn't mind Nintendo making microtransactions for.
Yeah, cool. So the thing that they have said, though, about this is they're not going to port games from their current consoles over to smartphones, because then it would not ruin, but it would certainly hurt the value of the games that already exist. I think that what they kind of mean by that is, like, we won't port games, but we will port engines and textures and aesthetics to make new games. So I think, and this, this is me saying this, but I think, we could see something that looks aesthetically exactly like Animal Crossing New Leaf to be the Animal Crossing game on iPhone. We would see something that looks aesthetically exactly like Mario Kart 7 to be the Mario Kart game. Something that looks aesthetically just like Link Between Worlds to be the Zelda game. Something like that.
And I'd bet we'd see that amp up when they release their new platform, which they've already said is going to be designed to make porting assets easy. So I wonder if that'll probably include iOS devices and Android devices too, not just their dedicated platforms.
Yeah, well, I hope that does mean dedicated platforms, because, one of the biggest reasons, this is a little off topic, but one of the biggest reasons that third parties don't develop for Wii U is because they have to build so much of the game from scratch in order to port it. Whereas with PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, you just change couple things here and there and it's good to go. But with Nintendo, you really need to dig in.
Even more so now when the newer consoles are using literally out of the box PC parts.
Right.
Yeah.
But
not Nintendo.
Not Nintendo.
Please understand.
So do you guys have any strong opinions or thoughts about what this NX is that we might see? I know we've heard Nintendo talk in the past about making a console that sort of combines their portable and their home console markets. Do we think this is it? Do we think that that's coming now, or do we think that technology would still be too expensive to happen anytime soon?
Well, it's not so much that they want to literally combine that. Oh, I mean, that is a possibility. Miyamoto has said that they've tossed around the idea of just having a handheld be their next main console, and then you can just hook it up to a TV and have it act like a
right.
console.
Well, I mean, I think part of something that's enticing, at least to me, just for convenience's sake, is like if you could bring the Wii U gamepad with you in your backpack and use that alone to play Wii U games. And that's something that I think would work really well and be amazingly convenient. But I think that the technology to make the gamepad function as a Wii U is going to be way too ridiculously expensive for any time like in the near future. At the same time, I think that if they build it with like the gamepad working as a game system and then hooking it up to the TV, it's not going to be nearly as sophisticated a gaming console as like it would be less sophisticated than the Wii U, and it would certainly be less sophisticated than like the next Xbox and the PS5.
Well, the main point that they've been trying to hammer across is that they don't want you to think of console and handheld as two platforms going forward. They want you to think of Nintendo as the platform, and then whatever devices they release as, I think the phrase they used was brothers in a family of devices. So it's possible that we'll see more than one piece of hardware released, because they say is we're working on a dedicated game platform. But the point they've been hammering in over and over again is that platform equals Nintendo. Platform doesn't equal Wii U or 3DS. Nintendo is the platform. So it's possible that NX, it might not even be specifically, the announcement, and it might not be specifically focused on hardware as much as it is just this new like account-based system where, you know, you buy a game and then you can get it on your Wii U or your 3DS or maybe one or two new devices that they announce.
Yeah, I actually have an interesting interpretation of what NX might stand for, and it's based on the way X has been used in some games in Japan. X sometimes will mean cross. We've seen that in Xenoblade Cross.
Right.
We've seen it in Project X Zone, which really is Project Cross Zone in Japan.
So do you think that means like cross between home console and handheld?
I don't know that it specifically means that, but I think the goal of their next system will be to make it natively compatible with any kind of device that can access their software.
So even like smartphones,
access
PCs.
their account system. And that doesn't mean that the software is necessarily going to port over to it, but it means that the device is going to be designed to connect to all these different things from the get-go, as opposed to now where they have to kind of Frankenstein it together.
Yeah, because they do have that new membership program coming up. They announced a new member system that connects not only to their consoles, their devices, but to smartphones, to PCs, to tablets.
And the amount of focus they've been putting on memberships and accounts makes me really think that's going to be central to what they're doing with their next platform. It's not just going to be kind of like how we have accounts on Xbox and PlayStation, where they've been around for so long that they're just part of the system at this point. I think it's really going to be a focal feature for them. Whether that works is another story.
Also, with this new membership program, that's also a joint venture between Nintendo and DNA. So they're not just teaming up with them for smartphones. DNA is going to help them design this membership program. And the CEO of...
I'm not sure if I like that.
Well, here's what the CEO of DNA had to say. He said that... first Iwata said that us combining with DNA is an extremely powerful combination. And then the CEO of the company said that his company, essentially, what they bring to the table is that they have an infrastructure that can handle massive amounts of traffic, and that they specialize in analyzing user activities and then quickly reflecting and so that they can improve the service. So their plan is to help Nintendo launch this membership program and then continually work to improve it based on fan feedback, essentially.
And then ideally help Nintendo build an infrastructure where they can actually do anything on the internet at all.
Yeah. And that's really where I think their value comes in, is Nintendo has I guess I shouldn't say no. They have limited experience with infrastructure. They have limited experience with understanding what an account system means, whereas DNA already has these understandings and already has expertise even in these areas.
So, guys, when do we think this new system NX will launch? Do you guys think it's something sooner, like 2016, 2017, or do you think if they're announcing it next year, I think it's probably safe to say 2017 at the earliest.
Yeah. Well, Iwata says, we hope to share information with you about NX next year. So it's not like he's even firmly cementing, like, here's this product that's coming out soon. He's saying, we're in the early stages. We've got a good idea of what we're going to be doing, and what we're going to do, and hopefully we can share that vision with you next year. So if you look historically, like, we got the code name for Wii as Nintendo Revolution in 2004. And then they actually...
Which was such a good name.
Yeah. So then they actually unveiled the product in 2005, and it didn't launch till 2006. And I expect kind of a similar timetable here, where they've revealed a code name, they've revealed they have this big game-changing idea, but we're not going to see it until 2016, and I don't imagine it'll launch until probably holiday 2017, which would give Wii U a full 5-year life cycle, which is pretty much standard for Nintendo.
Yeah, I'm completely with you.
And the place where this was announced too, an investor briefing sort of thing, or corporate release rather, is sort of tells me that it's far off, and they're just telling us this to please their stakeholders. It's not really, they're not really ready to really announce specifics, and they haven't announced specifics really. But I'd be skeptical of them announcing it and then releasing it more than a year later, because the tendency now is for things to be announced and then released like months later, not years later. And I think they'd be hurting themselves to put that much distance between the announcement and the launch.
I think that might be the tendency for most companies, but I mean, you look at even Wii U, it was revealed at E3 2011 and then didn't launch until November of 2012.
Yeah,
so,
and how well did that work out for them?
Not particularly well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll learn from that and change the strategy.
Well, they
Yeah, well, I mean, the Wii did work out for them, and that had the same timetable. So, I mean, it's not a matter of time. It's a matter of understanding their goals for the console, those goals being good, and acting well.
I guess the more time there is between announcement and launch, the more time there is for the honeymoon phase to wear off, which is why we've seen them kind of announce games closer to their releases, too, outside of things like Zelda, where they need to tell us it's coming, even if they aren't ready for it to see it yet. And with new 3DS, they announced it and released it within like a very, very short turnaround time.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Splatoon was announced at last E3. Codename Steam was announced then. Codename Steam came out just now, so that's like a 9-month period. Splatoon is still longer.
Well, let's just be honest. If they only showed what they were releasing last year at E3, they would have shown like no games. So
that's true. That is true.
Whereas if they're still developing games for Wii U, obviously they can show those, even if they don't show NX until it's about ready to go.
Well, so I mean, I think we have all pretty similar ideas about NX, about the smartphones. So are we all looking forward to it?
I'm looking forward to seeing more, and then I'll tell you if I'm looking forward to it.
I don't know if I'm ever really going to get into the Nintendo cell phone craze unless they, release like some must-have game for me, but I'm excited just because I think it's a move that's going to be very profitable for them, and then I think they can funnel that profit back into their main divisions and make more console and handheld games.
Well, I'm personally excited, mainly because finally I'll have something that's actually worth playing on my phone, and not just 2048 because it's convenient. Smartphone games for so long have just been, you play them because they're there and that's what is available to you to do. That's what's there to pass the time. But if what's there to pass the time is also a really good experience, like I'm hoping and I'm pretty confident that Nintendo will provide, then I think that's a really, really exciting idea.
Yeah, I'll admit something that I don't admit often, and that's I don't even have a smartphone yet. And that's only because I was waiting for the data plans to finally meet the price for the talk and text plans, and they finally did. So I'll be getting one before E3, and so I'm actually excited to see what's going to happen. Mostly because that'll be a completely new area for me anyway. So go
Welcome
smartphones.
To the 21st century.
Yeah, right.
All right, awesome. So, everybody, this is that marks the end of the second section in this week's podcast. But do stay tuned because after the break, we are going to be answering your questions. Like we said, fans at Gamnesia have asked us questions about everything and anything Nintendo. So we're going to answer them. It's going to be wacky. It's going to be serious sometimes. It's going to be a lot of fun. So please stay tuned.